peace to try to solve it.
This tension between opposing national stories was central to the work of the late Professor Rosemary Hollis. In 2019, at a public event in London for her book Surviving the Story, she explained how national narratives can harden into what she called the narrative trap.
I'll explain what I mean by the narrative trap, which is connected to this business of national narratives becoming conflict drivers.
This is a clip from that panel discussion.
Conflicts are not about just facts. They are about national stories or narratives. We were realizing at this stage that the dispute is not about facts. It's about what interpretation and value you give to facts. Which ones you think are important and which ones you think are peripheral. The reality is the coexistence of two or more different narratives. Reality is not an amalgamation of those narratives. It's not one or the other. Reality is both, and they coexist, and neither one of them is going to go away.
For her, the narrative trap is the idea that two groups or identities can become so trapped in their respective narratives that they cannot define themselves except in distinction from the other. So in a way, these two people see themselves as enemies, and yet their own sense of self was defined by not being the other. And that makes it very, very difficult to move on from that.
In Ukraine, Russia, and in the Middle East, incompatible narratives, sometimes one-sided and sometimes just full of fabrications, stand as obstacles to peace. Against this, the need to keep repeating more truthful versions of the narratives is essential.
I think it's a really interesting reflection of the great importance of narrative. Earlier this year, I was at a meeting for various Russia experts, which took place in London. One of the people speaking there was a Russian writer in exile, and somebody said to him, what can you actually do? And this exiled writer said, we can do journalism, because it is very, very important for us to make sure that we remind our compatriots, even if we are in exile, we remind our compatriots that there is a different version of events, and we try to spread that as widely as we possibly can. The power of the word, the power of journalism, as they saw it, is one thing which they do still really have at their disposal.
But is it naive to trust that truth will eventually win out? In 2017, a year after Donald Trump was elected as US president for the first time, Radio 4's Decoding the News explored exactly that question, with presenter Aditya Chakraborty, story guru Robert McKee, and Alistair Campbell all examining whether political narratives built on falsehoods can ever endure. Here's a moment from that first episode.
People who can tell stories get attention.
Robert McKee.
The people who can't, they're in a fight for their lives. I mean, look who won the last election in America. The rhetorician who had facts at her fingertips, or the guy who bullshitted his way to it, telling us lies, okay? And those lies got 48% of the population on his side.
That's the snag with political narratives. For all the professional cynicism, they have to be, as the film credits say, based on a true story. Otherwise, the voters stop believing both in the yarn and its spinner.
No return to boom and bust. Brits don't quit.
Look, I don't believe Donald Trump will survive.
Alistair Campbell.
He got elected on a pack of lies.
And yet, here he is, back in the White House again. His critics focused on the many demonstrable falsehoods Trump uttered during and before his campaign, believing they would discredit him. But they underestimated the power of his narrative that elites had ignored the interests of ordinary working people and put the country in decline, and that it needed a disruptor to drain the swamp and make America great again. Voters who saw this as representing their truth were happy to overlook the many falsehoods. Voters were not so much choosing between different policies or even personalities, but deciding which narrative resonated the most with them. How many, I wonder, were aware of this?